It is my pleasure to welcome Ash Johns to the podcast. Welcome, Ash. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, so I would love to read a little bit about your bio and then just kind of explore, get to know you a little bit about your journey and what led to the incredible work that you're doing in the world. So, Ash Johns is a certified psychospiritual life coach, ancestral healer, and business strategist. She's guided thousands of women to identify, break, and unheal unseen generational patterns created from ancestral traumas passed down through your lineage so you can create freedom, wealth, belonging, and love that you desire and deserve. And we are going to be exploring all about ancestral healing in this episode and how it really impacts our present day. So, just so much in that topic to unpack and explore. But I'd love to hear just a little bit more about you. Can you share maybe your sun, moon, and rising and how that impacts the work that you're doing in the world?
Oh, this is lovely. I love how before we actually start recording, you're like, are there any talking points? Like, what do you want to talk about? And I'm like, yeah, let's just go with the flow. And immediately I know exactly what's coming through. So this is going to be a delight. So first thing is my sun, moon, and rising are all the same. So one thing you will know about me is I am through and through myself. There's not many variations. I am a triple Pisces with very strong Piscean placements on top of my sun, moon, and rising being in Pisces. And so I come from creativity. I come from spirituality, the unknown, the esoteric, the unseen, the deep emotions, the healing waters, that's where I thrive. That's how I see the world. I'm also a projector, if that helps anyone, if you're in the human design, into the human design life. But to me, you know, yeah, I would just say I'm gifted at seeing what you can't see, but is very present.
Yes, and just the short amount of time that we've spent together, I feel that depth and that flow, that Piscean energy. So really, really beautiful. And I'd love to explore with you just how you began to notice these gifts coming online. Is it something that was always present for you, or is it something that happened gradually over time?
I believe it was a bit of both and. So as a kid, I was always very sensitive to other people's energy. The language everyone talks about now is being an empath or a highly sensitive person. Um, having visions or dreams, very vivid dreams, or speaking in different languages in my dreams, or even sleepwalking were experiences of my childhood. And through those experiences, I would always remember a piece of information that was given to me by the spirits that be, by God, by angels, and also ancestors. And as I moved through my teenage years and my young adult years, I pushed it away, particularly teenage years, because as you can imagine, as a teenager growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, we would skip school and smoke a little weed or have a little fun. And that's when the gifts would really become heightened because there were no matrix filters, if you will, to kind of keep it tampered down. And so I would hear people's thoughts. I would see the energies and the ancestors that were working with them or around them. And it would kind of creep me out. It would blow my high. And I've really talked about that in other podcasts, but it's true. So I pushed those gifts away. And it wasn't till my advertising career and getting into hypnotherapy and NLP and understanding the power of marketing and messaging and what we're doing with our belief systems and how that goes into sales and creating a business that it all started to come back to me as I saw how messaging would activate different energies and ancestors and um, highlight people's path in their lives, and I couldn't deny it anymore. That's kind of how I started combining my spiritual background and gifts as well as my interests of helping women create the lives that they really want, whether that's through entrepreneurship or through understanding who you truly are and your purpose and your path in life, or it's through the relationships you want to create and so on. So that's the shortest version I can give you, Emily, on it, because I could go on for this whole episode just talking about that.
Yeah, I am so curious, and there's a little bit that I want to unpack on that journey there because I know
Mm,
you know, just listening to your voice, you have such a beautiful and peaceful, you know, calming voice, and you know, it just feels like this fluid movement and unfolding, and yet I know that a you know transition like that from advertising to like really exploring your healing gifts and bringing that forward in your life you know can be a transition. So I'd love to you know hear a little bit if there is something along your way that really helped to activate that and maybe to create that significant change.
mm. My favorite saying associated with that process is to follow the breadcrumbs. Follow the breadcrumbs, followed by trust the process. Because something that our industry as coaches has done, and also, the world of being a strategist, which I'm formally trained in advertising as a strategist, a brand strategist. Um, what's happened is we're now always offering or selling or teaching the breadcrumbs, or reflecting back and helping to dissect or teach people what's going to happen in their journey through strategy and insights, and breaking down those details. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, we need that when we're swimming in our transformational process and we feel like we're drowning and we're lost and we're questioning ourselves. But the truth is, my journey has unfolded and unfolded so beautifully because I have allowed myself, I've trusted myself to follow the breadcrumbs one step at a time. And so, realizing that I had a gift of connecting with people, that people always wanted to talk to me or share their deepest secrets or their deepest fears or their greatest desires with me, or they'll say, I see that this is a problem or a pattern. And it's also a pattern that my mother had, but I didn't see it this way. And like things like that. That was happening in the ad agencies. I was an ambassador for the agencies I worked at. And so not only did I do focus group work where you're just literally tapping into people's emotions and triggers and interests to buy a product or what's going on in their life, but I also would sit and do like the college ambassador programs. And so kids who are like, do I go into advertising? Do I become a lawyer? Do I trust what my parents are saying? Or do I go backpacking, for a year or two? And so being that liaison to support people in their lives has always been there. Like, even in church as a kid, I would share my testimony or my breakthrough or a miracle that happened. And then people would be like, oh, you inspired me, or want to come and get prayer, or would be vulnerable what they were struggling with. So when we look at the breadcrumbs of our lives, what God and who we are and our community and what people have said about you your whole life, you'll start to see like who you're meant to be. And so when I realized that I was miserable in advertising, but I love the strategy, I love the people, I love the storytelling, I love the impact it can make, and I also love the creational experience behind it. Like, it's very spiritual. Like, you're pulling in energies and ideas to help influence someone, whether it's to buy more actually do need in their life, right? So that was a moment for me, and I started soul searching of like, who have I always been? What have people always said about me? What have I loved? What have I hated? What do I freeze up every time, and I procrastinate and I doubt myself? And when I started looking at that and doing meditation and sitting down and creating altars and going into plant medicine and becoming an energy channel, like all these little things started to almost mix like a soup, like a stew, and I could really taste the flavors of who I have always been meant to be.
Mm.
And then I would even say there is a moment of going through that process. There's a moment of realizing what's happening and what is the flavor of your life and who you truly are. And then there's another step of starting to embody that. And that's another process that looked like me walking away from advertising and becoming a consultant, a freelance makeup artist, a founder of a video production company. Like, I was doing all these different things, trying on my hats.
Mhm.
And in that moment, again, what I loved and what people reflected back to me was how I made them feel, how listening to them would always get right down to the heart of what was truly going on. And they would see that it was bigger than them, but they had the power to change it. In my makeup artist chair, working at the Big Ten network, I worked on cable TV. They would be like, the anchors would be like, I don't know what it is about when you do my makeup, but I have such clarity and I feel so good before I go on air. And I'm like, oh, this is a theme that my energy and how I see people is very healing. From there, I walked away from all those hustles and side gigs and consulting and became a retreat manager in Bali. I wanted to combine business and healing and woman empowerment and spirituality in one place. I asked for it and the universe delivered really quickly. And so that really was the moment of saying business and spirituality can go together. Our ancestral backgrounds affect everything, our money, our identity, our relationships, our womanhood. And spirituality is bigger than visualization and meditation. It's actual spirits. So yeah, that's kind of how the journey unfolded. But it was
Oh,
always about following those breadcrumbs.
yes, I so appreciate you going in further depth into your journey because it's so inspiring to hear you share kind of the twists and turns along the way. And I can see how you say that it is about following the breadcrumbs. And I feel like sometimes we can be unhappy or we can feel resistance in a certain, you know, where we are, what we're doing, and we can feel like, oh, we need to completely change it all, when in actuality there's bits and pieces that we can pull, and we can, like you said, create this alchemical stew that is much more of what our heart desires. And I feel like a big common theme of that is like the exploration of like what it is that lights you up, and not being afraid to like try out different things. And so yeah, I love that. And I guess one question that I have for you is, it sounds like you've always been somebody who, creates this sense of ease around, making people feel comfortable and really seeing them for their highest self, and more of who they are. And I'm wondering if in the work that you're doing, it's like you're channeling almost, I would say, or connecting with ancestors. No? Okay, so tell me more about
No.
that.
So for those of you who are listening to us, obviously we're on Zoom video. So as Emily's speaking, I'm like shaking my head. No, I don't channel. I do not channel for people. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because when people think of connecting with ancestors, that's immediately what they think of. Like if it's not being a medium and a mouthpiece for the ancestors, it's, oh, you're going to pull some cards and do a tarot and I have a message from my grandma, or you will interpret a dream where my grandmother came through and I can tell you the dream. You're going to tell me what it means. Like it's usually one of those three things, unless you go down like genealogy and all of those other ways of looking at ancestral healing and ancestral connection work. But no, what I do is actually guide you or a person through trance to create an energy field, if you will, to call in their ancestors where you can have a conversation with them yourself. Right.
Mm,
So, this is a skill that I actually guide you through and teach you. So, when our work is done, you can continue having a relationship with your ancestors. So, that's number one as an overarching thing. That's
yeah.
what I do and what you experience.
Hmm.
The second thing is it's not just about, it's not open sesame where we open a portal or a field to connect with ancestors and you're just talking to anyone and everyone and getting family secrets and maybe asking for a miracle or their support. Which is oftentimes when people think of ancestors, that's what they want. They want an answer like, why is it this way? What needs to be healed? And I need your help. One of those three, if not all three of them. And what we actually focus on is identifying and calling in very old ancestors, people that you wouldn't know in your family tree who remember life being differently than what it currently is. For example, I've had clients who really could not use their voice. It's like they knew in their soul they had something to say and something to write, whether that was going to be expressed in incredible marketing messages, whether it was going to be the formation and the articulation of their brand purpose, whether it was going to be a book or just to be able to write in their journal or speak the truth in front of their family or to do one social media post. There was actually someone who our whole thing was just putting their message online through social. But times in that example, it's none of the women were able to speak truly. It was a safety and survival mechanism to not speak your truth. And so we have to go all the way back in the lineage when that was not the case and understand and unravel why that wound has become culture, has become the standard or the status quo, and to unweave the spell, if you will. So, this work of ancestral healing and the way that I do is to help you connect to your roots and to heal and to know the medicine that is within your lineage, but also to see how it was before and to then innovate and create what you want with your ancestors. No one's left behind. We do it
Mm.
together because we are them and they are us. We're an extension of them. And if you do believe this, I do believe in reincarnation, where our ancestors return and they will come through too. So the work that we do in our lives and the work that we do in our lives with them is what creates generational healing. It's what breaks generational patterns. It's what is truly a way to leave a lasting legacy that is beyond just materials.
Yeah, there's so much that I want to unpack there because it feels so big. It feels so big. Like there's so much that's tied up into that that we may not be even consciously aware of. And
Yeah.
so, you know, what would you say, like if somebody is having a block or they're experiencing resistance? Like I would just love to unpack some of the common ancestral wounds that you see show up on a daily basis, and then would you say that if somebody is experiencing something like that, that it's always related to ancestors in some way, shape, or form, in some way of this idea of generational patterning, or would you say that it really kind of depends and you have to explore and
Mm.
yeah.
Okay, let me just write a few notes so I don't forget all the things. So first, in order to wrap our heads around what I'm going to share, I want to point out a difference in how I work and also what this work is. So I actually am considering to take off coach from my title completely because I'm actually not a coach. It was just the thing that Stripe and, like the business things need you to. Yes, I'm certified as a life coach and a psychospiritual life coach, but the truth is the work is way beyond coaching. Um, I consider myself to be a guide, and me differentiating that and explaining that right now is going to make sense in the what I want to share with you next. When you're a coach, you're looking for an outcome. We're looking at SMART goals. We're looking at a process, a step by step thing that's going to move you forward. Where healing and walking your path and unraveling family trauma and wounds and uncovering who you are as a soul, as a spirit, as a person, and your lineage and your role and how you honor your lineage while also honoring your soul's calling and manifest that physically in the world. Like that's a journey. Like we're talking about life journey work. And so I really do consider myself to be a guide that gets to walk with you or support you in those acute moments of distress or breakthrough or leveling up, or even mixing the pot in a different way than you have in the past. So that's number one. Two, to spin off of that is a lot of times people do think that this is so much, right? Like ancestral healing is going to be so hard. We're going to be crying. It's going to be traumatic. And like, I'm going to see all the terrible things about all the stuff that happened to my family and why my mom is my mom and my dad is my dad and why I was adopted or abandoned and all these things, which there are moments of that. But the truth is, this is called ancestral healing because it is a healing process. This is going to bring more space and capacity and love and power and resonance and authority into you, into your energy field, into how you show up in the world. And so it's actually not a lot. You get a lot of clarity really quickly because you stop looking at yourself and what needs to be fixed in you or what happened in you and your family. And you start looking at who you are as a system of people, a system of energies. And when we start looking at things from a system perspective, we can start to unravel piece by piece and take actionable, digestible actions that are inspiring to you. And energetically they are sound in the direction that you and your lineage and your life you want to go. Right.
Yeah, I
So,
want to just add here that I feel like, one thing that has been significant for me unraveling all of this is just recognizing some things that don't belong to me personally. Like,
Oh
in
yeah.
other words, right? Like they've been passed down, their patterns or things that have been like adopted, but like
Yeah.
this anxiety doesn't belong to me, you know?
It's my favorite. It's one of my favorites. It's like anxiety, this level of self-doubt, this level of playing small. Like really, I want to wear all gold everything, diamond encrusted, whatever, and take 3 days off a week every single day. Oh my God, that doesn't even make sense. But you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like we're like, oh no, I come from a hardworking family. Like that, I have to work hard, or my anxiety, or playing small, or my relationship to home. Like those are all very common manifestations, if you will, of deeper ancestral wounds that do not belong to you. So I have a lot of clients who come to that realization actually through hypnotherapy, through trance work. Well, I wouldn't say trance work. Sometimes people have done shamanic healing work and trance work by the time they come to me, but it'll be like therapy. It'll be what they uncovered in some other modality. And they're like, this isn't mine. And now what do I do with it? Like, how do I actually clear it from my system? And
Yeah.
that's really when you want to just changing the behavior or the mindset, or no longer identifying with that anxiety or with that particular wound or behavioral pattern isn't enough to actually clear it from your energy field. It's still walking with your ancestors, and your ancestors are with you. So I'll have people be like, "Oh yeah, I do ancestral work. I no longer do this." But every time you get around family, it triggers you. It inflames again. Or you catch yourself at the grocery store doing, getting sharp with the cashier as your mother did. But that defensiveness isn't yours. It isn't even hers. It's been running up and down this lineage for how long? So this is why ancestral healing in the way that I do it requires you, the person, as the conductor of your family right now, as the living face of your family, to then call in your ancestors to alleviate, heal, overcome this thing throughout the whole lineage.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's so powerful, and I love how you refer to it as a conductor because a lot of images and metaphors come through around music, and it's this idea that like we just keep playing the same note like over
that's it.
and over again, and it's like how do you remove that discordant frequency so that you can really play the music that you came here to play? And that feels like a huge piece of it. And also the idea of these systems, it makes so much sense because it's like so much we know biologically is, integrated and absorbed in the first 7 years of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Yeah, absorbed in the first 7 years of life. And then also, we, especially those of us who are assigned female at birth and identify as women, we were an egg cell inside of our mothers while our mothers were babies inside of our grandmothers. So at minimum, we need to be doing 3 levels of generational or ancestral healing. But oftentimes with my clients, when we're working at some real core, like this is a survival mechanism, this is a way of being that we didn't even realize was an issue until we get into the work. We're going back 10 generations. We're going back 12, 17. I'm 22, and you're like, I didn't even realize this. And it's incredible to really see and understand what all is going on and how you can relate to it completely different when you get down to the root.
Yeah, this brings up a question that I have that's about whole lineage healing as opposed to like connecting with one particular ancestor. But I just want to like caveat with this, which with what you said, which is about this idea of triggers. And I feel like in this case and in so many cases, triggers can be a gift because they really show us these spaces and places that are tender, that do need this attention and can like unravel these patterns that have been passed down from generations.
You said passed down from generation to generation and it cut off. Is that
Yeah.
what you ended? Yes. And that's it. That's nailed it. Triggers are good, actually. They show us a lot of information. And I'll even expand this conversation a little bit more because I know right now it's all the rave to be doing somatic healing and looking at your nervous system. But as I was saying in a post, someone tagged me in yesterday. They were talking about how do you regulate your nervous system when you realize the expressions or the triggers are absolutely generational, they're generational curses. And this is when you do really want to work with your ancestors, because we do share nervous system, we share energy with our people. And
Mhm.
so whatever your ancestors and your culture and your family believe around a certain stimuli or an experience or scenario, your nervous system hasn't shifted from that. Like everyone in your lineage still believe that. I'll give an example. I love teaching by examples, by the way. So a good one is I was recently in Spain, in Seville, and I went into a beautiful hotel. I was working on the book proposal, my book proposal. And as I was leaving out of the hotel, I smelled this incredible scent. It was like the most beautiful perfume ever. And like, y'all, you don't know this about me, but you're about to. I love scent. I've just become a scent junkie. And so I go into this teeny little boutique perfume store, and I'm chatting with the lady, and I'm like, what is the scent? Like the scent that you're spraying out in the lobby. And so she's taking me through, and we're trying to find the scent. And we went through so many scents that we couldn't find it after we found it, because I got curious to try others. And well, maybe we can look in the camera. Like I thought that she was getting kind of tired of me going through all of the perfumes and was wondering if I was going to buy, and like kind of letting me know there is someone who watches the transactions because we got all these different perfumes. And so an ancestral trauma and a trigger within me, two things happening at once. The ancestral trauma was, you think I'm not going to buy, like I'm not worthy to be in here. The personal trauma and experience was, you're doubting me and I'm taking up too much of your time. So these two wounds and traumas are kind of like triggering up. And I'm like, what do you mean by there's a camera? Like I thought she was trying to, say something completely different. And so I asked her, I took the time to feel my body light up about this. And I asked her,
Mhm.
what do you mean by that? And she's like, no, I'm thinking we could watch the camera to see which one you sprayed and that you said, oh, I like it. Cause I did this huge motion, like, oh, I love this one. And I was like, wow, if we don't ever repattern with our ancestors, the meaning of something stays the same. And therefore, we're going to have the same nervous system trigger. So,
That's such a
this is
powerful example.
very powerful. Like, I talk to my ancestors all the time. Since I do this work, it's like I don't have to do it the way that I guide people. And I was like, wow, y'all, wasn't that amazing? And they were like, yeah, like it felt so great. So of course I purchased like 3 bottles anyway because I love them all. But this example is, right now everyone is saying, let me regulate my nervous system. But if we don't ever get to the core wounds, beliefs, and trauma that created that patterning in our nervous system, we're not really getting into the work. We're kind of like maintaining and soothing our nervous system. But we're not changing the triggers or like being able to work with the triggers to unlock what is the deeper truth and the healing opportunity for ourselves and our lineages, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I want to explore another example, which is something like that has been really personal to my journey. And I know a lot of people listening as well. And it's something that you brought up already, which is around this idea of self-expression, like being okay and comfortable, confident, expressing yourself, sharing your voice, showing up, being visible. And, I know this is a really common block. And my question is like, sometimes I feel, and I know that I have many memories in past lifetimes of having my voice shut down. And I feel like so many of us can relate to that. And so, is this idea of, is this something that I've experienced karmically, versus it's a block in my lineage?
Mm. So I want to move the language around a little bit. In general, it's a block. It's a block for you. It's a block for your ancestors. It's a block for the business. It's a block for your desires. It's a block for your dreams. It's a block, right? Whenever we can't show up or go for what we really want. Now, assigning the responsibility is what I usually phrase this in my work of like, is this me or is it ancestral? Like, is this me or is this y'all? And the answer is, it's always a combination of the two. And so I often guide clients, and even potential clients, y'all who are listening can do this, is sitting down, centering yourself, slowing down your breath, connecting with your heart, grounding your tailbone, and just breathing for a little while and bring up the thing that you're working through, right? If it's, I'm very afraid or I'm resistant to showing up and being visible online, for example. And then ask yourself, how much of this, percentage wise, How much of this is mine? How much of it is ancestral? How much of it is cultural too? The collective. We can't forget about that, right? And usually, when you slow yourself down and really tune into that inquiry, you get crystal clear how much of it is ancestral and how much of it is yours. And then you can start to work on what part is mine. That 25%, that 10% is like, all right, I said I wanted to have a plan and I work on my mindset. Let me do some exercises. Let me get around community who are all doing one post a day. Like, let me do those things that are 100% in my control. And usually, when you start doing that, you'll unravel some other stuff. Then you come around to that 75% that is ancestral. And that's when you want to be like, all right, how many generations back have we been silencing ourselves or using manipulative communication patterns to get what we want instead of saying exactly what we need, all these different ways it can manifest. And you want to call forth an ancestor who can give you an answer, who can say, what is the medicine to heal this, the unique medicine in our lineage? What was it like before this ever happened? So you have an imprint of being able to speak freely and it was loved or respected or cherished. And it also, you can also ask, like, how much of this is from my past life and how much is it for me to clear for myself and our lineage in this life? Because again, another way people think of ancestral healing is it's all about my past life. What I'm presenting in my format of whole lineage healing to do ancestral healing, it's about the whole system of a person. It's not just me and my power and my mind and my actions and my past lives. It's my past life, my current life, my ancestors near and far. Like, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, and as you do the work, you get to see how much of it is your responsibility and how to take that in bites and pieces. And when you tell the ancestors to handle their work. And that particular moment in everyone's ancestral healing journey is incredible because that is the moment where you get to say, I'm sliding what isn't mine back to y'all, not just to disregard it, but actually to ask y'all to release it, metabolize it, elevate it, alchemize it, and bring it back to the gold, because underneath that behavior and coping mechanism is goals for the ancestors. And you literally see them. I've had clients describe what they're seeing with their ancestors in many different ways, but they actually do their work. And when they do their work, they then come back and give you what is needed for you as you can continue embodying the healing in your real life.
Hmm. Beautiful. One question that's coming up is like, say, for example, you are not super familiar with your own lineage, and it's like harder to maybe draw upon. Would you say like there's some suggestions that you have, or do you find that it's pretty easy when you're in that space and when you're guiding people to, in some way, shape, or form, connect with your ancestors?
Yeah, this is a really good question that comes back to the theme that we were kind of talking about earlier, which is trust the process. I've had clients who didn't know their family at all, or were strange, or were adopted, or knew their biological family, but really were raised by their step family. And so your ancestors are your ancestors, whether you know them or not, whether you immigrated, changed your name, whether you enslaved, no matter what. There's nothing you can do literally to cut off the connection. We're just going to start with establishing your trust in that and helping you to open up that communication portal so you can sense them or feel them or heal them, hear them, and essentially have an experience that'll let you establish the belief in your people and that they have your back, and that whatever they're walking with, they do. Like, everybody's ancestors, for the most part, have an invested interest to see you do well, because
Mm,
that's how they get to come back in the lineage, whether you have blood babies or not, So seeing their descendants being well and doing things that they weren't able to do, or righting the wrongs that happened in the past, is a very honorable thing. So you don't have to worry about, I don't know my people or I do know my people. And that was a challenge as well, because they're like, well, in 1774, I have documents that my family did, or they came over on the Mayflower or whatever. And I'm like, cool, we know that, but let's let them present themselves to you how they need to, not
mm,
based on what we know, right?
yeah.
Because documents and archives can present one story, but how they are in spirit can be completely different.
Mhm.
So the best thing I say is just show up as you are with an open heart, and what's meant to be will always, always be.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Um, and now, are you declaring that you connect with elevated, benevolent ancestors during this process?
Yes, absolutely. So I love this question because oftentimes I get a lot of pushback on this, being like, how can you just skip over, my more recent ancestors, what they're problematic, or we're just going to spiritually bypass them? And I'm like, no, no. We are starting at a starting point with elevated. You can use the word benevolent, but essentially just elevated. Doesn't mean that they're just all white and angelic. But they have rested. They have joined the great cosmos. They are connected to God. They're not as invested in the stories of their lifetime, and they remember things that have been forgotten. They've reclaimed them. So there's a difference between ancestral time and our time. But in general, I like to say that they've been resting for a while.
Yeah,
Um, and in the process, we just need to go as far back to start the work. But we always end up including more recent ancestors in the whole lineage process. So that's literally what whole lineage is about. It is people who are living, such as yourself, are included in the process, and those dead and gone all the way back as far as we need to go. And there are times where we have future ancestors or future offspring or future family members come through as well. So it's a very end-to-end bookend, again, system experience.
yeah. What has been some of the most surprising experiences or takeaways from this work for you? And also, how has your sort of cultural explorations, I know you've traveled and lived all over the world, how has that informed your work as well?
Oh man, you're hitting me with some good questions. I might need you to repeat those. But before I answer the first one, I just, sometimes people are like, again, is this something that I need to do with my ancestors, or is this something that I'm responsible for in my own life? And I just want to point out here that in my field and the way that I see the world and the medicine I'm meant to bring is that everything is ancestral. I mean, everything we've been taught has come from someone who came before us, you know, and someone taught them before that, and someone taught them before that. And so the narrative of, I'm going to break this pattern, or I'm going to break this chain, or I'm going to be the first, we do not do anything in isolation. This is a innovative and modern way of returning us to village life, because a long, long time ago, it doesn't matter what your race or your background is, we all had a village. We all conducted or had a conversation with the cosmos and those who came before us and living elders and other peers in order to make decisions to fulfill our destiny and our roles in our lives. So this is another approach to a very ancient way of doing things, and we get to do it over this amazing internet, creating businesses that we love and wearing garments that are gorgeous. um, but I've had some incredible journeys. One, I will say, I've never had a client who didn't connect with ancestors. Okay. And I've worked with thousands of people at this point. I have never had a session or a client that I didn't cry with, and seeing them do their ancestral work and getting those great epiphanies. And one that comes to mind is a woman who's very successful. She was a CEO in diversity, equity, and inclusion field, working with some of the top brands, and was really struggling with, while invited to all the best parties and well known and having a lovely, well published book, was just really struggling with feeling that she was loved and appreciated and accepted as a woman. Like, where's the space I can be soft and, kind of pushing away that she does carry queen energy, very much so. Like, things need to be done at a high level. And because of the way, and also her lineage, it was, don't be so high strong, like don't be so high maintenance. Do
Mm.
wonderfully as it relates to business, but in your day to day, please like blend in. But because of that blending, she wasn't able to find a partner. So there was a couple different things we were working through in this particular package together. And there was this moment in her ancestral healing journey where her ancestors literally almost put her in like this like queen spa healing experience. It was incredible. They were like judging her up and like doing her hair and washing her down, and every single fingernail, like the way they were wrapping her in energy and love and showing her the level of the caliber, if you will, of care and respect and admiration she should be living at, and to make that normal for her. when she came out of that session, which by the way, every time you do work with ancestors, there is an embodiment practice. There is things you need to do in this physical realm to make that spiritual work really stick and manifest. And so her doing her embodiment practices were so cute because she wasn't super girly or very feminine. And they had her doing all these very feminine, girly, sweet, like high end, like it was just beautiful. And her response to it, like what it did to her system, how men started responding to her, how she was more receptive to going out on dates, how her team were just stepping up, being like, I'll take care of this. Oh, I really want to, stretch myself and grow. Like, give me a chance. Let me see if I can prove some things to you. It's like she completely moved into queen throne energy that allowed her to be more likable and more desired and more magnetic. And that's something that, in my opinion, having gone through so many different modalities, I'm a lifelong healer. I just happen to feel that ancestral work is the most underrated work in all of our self development, personal growth fields. But this is not, this work is not, it's not mental.
Mm,
This isn't about acquiring knowledge or learning how to dress. In her example, it wasn't about dressing feminine or using feminine communication language or learning how to be a feminine boss babe. This was energy. This was I am free to be this fully expressed, able to relax and still receive woman. And that can play out in my relationships, my sensuality, how I dress myself, and how I have a team. So
that
that's
totally
one
comes.
of my most favorite,
I
yeah,
love it. I love it. I had chills listening to that story. I mean, you're such a great storyteller. And, it's such a beautiful example. It is an energetic shift. And, to be able to open up your energy for a different way of moving and being and flowing is such a beautiful gift.
yeah. That was yeah, thank you for saying that because that's truly things and your ancestors holding you in whatever way is appropriate. There's also the releasing. We've seen things where it was 80% ancestral and they really needed to let go of their anger or their burdens, and seeing your ancestors release and let go of a belief that has been holding all of y'all back and manifesting in multiple different ways, whether it's alcoholism in this way or not following through in your word or dating the same kind of man, whatever way it manifests doesn't matter. The wound, the core wound is in the lineage. And seeing your people let go of it and soften and open, it always brings beautiful tears to our eyes to be like, wow, my great 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 greats, all of them, all the women now can open up to love or to their authority, or holding the boundaries or whatever it might be, just to give examples. Yeah.
Yeah, it truly is generational, the work that is being done. And
Yeah.
it also, like for me, it unlocks an even deeper level of compassion because I feel like compassion for ourselves too. It's like, okay, this wound, this pattern is not even mine, and I can see how it's been ingrained, how it's been passed down, and I can see it with, eyes of tenderness and really love myself through this journey.
Yes, I believe that this work is the ultimate level of like courage and compassion because it does require the courage to want to open up Pandora's box. A lot of people are like, well, what am I going to find? Well, what's going to happen? Well, what if my whole life blows up, Ash? And I'm like, but that's what we want. We want it all to change towards your desires and fulfilling everything that you're called to be and to do and to have. And it unlocks a level of compassion, even with the most challenging things on a personal level, but even challenging things from a societal cultural level. Like we get to understand the behaviors of humans and how they affected the others and can say, I understand, and here's the solution. How do we resolve this? Do we want to see this differently? Have what's the word, repair or whatever around this, and how can I be an orchestrator of that on behalf of my people? Right, it is completely courageous and compassionate.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
And
necessary for this cosmic shift that we're undergoing right now.
yes, completely. Which actually goes to the question you asked me earlier on like what I've realized in my travels. I went through the entire eastern coast of the United States, stopping in all of our historical cities. I'm saying St. Augustine, Charleston, Richmond, right? Even Plymouth Rock. Okay. Like we're going to all these places that carry all of these ancestral energies in the land and the people and the culture. And oh my goodness, sorry. The land, the people and the culture, and then crossing over into the Caribbean and being able to experience what has been there from a colonial perspective and still is in the culture countries that started all of that, right? Like I was in England, I was in Spain, I was in Portugal, and being able to speak to the land and see like all of this was about creating, literally creating opportunities to survive. Right. And yes, there were some people who had more wealth and who were funding those expeditions into the quote unquote Americas. They were doing it to hold on to what little or what great wealth they had, including obviously the monarchy who still has a whole lot of wealth. But the fight of trying to stay relevant and hold on to what is sustaining your life is the issue. Right. It's almost to me, if we look at this in a greater perspective of the collective, I often say our greatest reoccurring trauma that all of us hold is just trying to survive, like not honoring the life and death cycle that we go through every single day, but also in our lifetime, and knowing that it's not over until our soul says it's over, until God says it's over. And because of that, we will look at the resources, we'll look at the land, we'll look at the women, we'll do all these things to try to control and manipulate in our favor based on trying to survive. And so, there's a lot that I have to say and to write about that journey, but it gave a lot of compassion, a lot of understanding, not to absolve, but to look at where the narrative gets to evolve and move forward in our collective healing on a cultural level. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big part of this new reality that we're birthing, where it is more about, it's more than survival, it's about thriving. And how do we do that, from a collective perspective, from an individual perspective, so that all of our gifts are able to be, shared, and we're able to really live this high expression of what our souls came here to do and to experience. And so, yeah, I mean, I know that abundance is one thing that can be tied to this idea of really thriving. And I know that this is something that you help in your practice, is around, you know, bringing forward conscious businesses and helping to really share those gifts in a meaningful way. And I'd love to just explore how ancestral healing work ties to, the business realm.
The first thing that comes to mind is just being able to access more love, like more love in our business as a conscious business owner, CEO, a startup. We have conscious businesses to help serve humanity, to make people's lives better, not just other people and our own, right? We're like, yes, I want to make money doing something that is heartfelt and meaningful. And so when we run our businesses off of love, love for self, love for our community, love for our clients, love for the process of business, like that alone is life changing because and the entrepreneurial journey, in my opinion, is completely different than creating just a business or doing commerce or transactions, because entrepreneurship is I'm going to take something, or I'm been given a perspective and I get to birth it into the world. It's taking two things and putting it together into something new. Otherwise, we're just buying someone else's business model. But to me, entrepreneurship means that there's something this world needs, and I need to be the shepherd to bring it to life, right, into the world. And so the more love I can access by doing my personal development work, by staying on my mindset, by having my ancestors behind me and with me, by making sure that their fears around money or their fears around leadership or their fears around having boundaries and having tight contracts or even overworking. One of the biggest things I learned this year and I started changing was my ancestral relationship to work was still very much so rooted in the period where my lineage was enslaved. And so it was like, I love what I do so much that, of course, this isn't overworking, but it's like, yes, it is. It is. Me just showing up in my presence with the wisdom of God and my calling and my medicine and my greatest ancestors backing me is more than enough. We don't need to do more. And the other one, I'll just share another piece from my own, is that believing that my presence, like I had to physically or digitally be present in order to have the same impact in my business. And that also isn't true. That is based on, again, I give a lot of that to the period in time where my family was enslaved, because it was like, you're going to come to work and that's the only way that you are able to be here. Like, you must be physically present. And so, I think that that particular example shows the difference in the depth of the work, because in the coaching world or in the business coaching world, it's like, oh yeah, just don't exchange time and money. Like, you can make more money without you having to use your time or physically showing up. Like, logically and strategically, that makes sense. But if you have a lineage belief system that is wounded on or rooted in trauma and wounds that says you do best and you have the greatest impact by showing up, and someone feeling your energy live, doesn't matter how much strategy and logic is there, you're going to still revert back to that. So this is when I know people are ready to do, or you're ready to do ancestral work, because like, you've been around the block, what needs to change. Logically, it makes sense. You see other people doing it. People even look to you as a leader, and still you're experiencing something that's less than ideal in your business or in your life.
Yeah. I'm so
Yeah.
curious for you, like what has changed for you in your business to create more like fluidity and flow, and like what are some of the things that are lighting you up right now?
Oh, I love that. So, two major things happen in 2022 with my business. So similar and transformation, if you will. Um, my relationship with my business changed in two ways. My business is no longer my baby, and it's no longer my lover. So, the generational pattern that was going on, really the manifestation of the generational pattern or the ancestral wound, was that women in my family had children young and as single mothers. And so, as a young woman, I always said I would never have children, and I would never have children if everything wasn't planned out and I didn't have a partner and like a husband and like someone who was as enthusiastic as being to be a father as I am to be a mother. And we make these big declarations and we think of it as the manifestation or how it has physically shown up in our family. But that's just one of many ways the wound or the ancestral trauma can show up. So I made this declaration of how I didn't want it to manifest. However, I never got to the wound, like the core wound, until the end of 2020 is when it started showing its head. And I worked on it through 2021, and then it finally changed in the business in 2022. So what happened was, sure, I didn't want to have children early or without a partner or whatever, but my business became it. My
Mm.
business was my baby. There was no one who could parent it as the way that I did. And there was and sure, I do have a personal brand. I get that, of course. But the truth is, I felt no one else could mother, govern, help grow my business as my baby other than me. And I also felt this deep, like, responsibility and burden. This theme of responsibility and burden was coming through. And I was like resenting my business, but loving it. So that was one. All my energy was going to my business as my baby. And then when my baby business was also doing so great as it did, it then became my masculine lover. It was just like, I don't really need a man because my business is doing great. And like, if it's not to my standards, like, me and my business are giving me what I need. So, all your efforts, amazing men that I'm dating, even if it's the greatest thing, it's never enough. It was like always judging, always criticizing men because of what I could create with my own business. And there came a point, and I turned 35, I'm turning 36, where on my birthday, I had that like woman breakdown cry that other women who were older than me told me about could happen, where you're like fully single without children, your business is everything. And I'm like, but I have a healing business and I help all these women across the world. And I even have some male clients. Like, why am I feeling this way? But there was a huge sense of like emptiness, that none of this really matters because I really want to have a family and a husband. And I was like, this is so interesting, Ash. Let's find out more. So started going down my lineage to learn and look at my relationship to mothering and my relationship to men, the masculine, and money, the holy trinity. And through that year, my business is now has actual employees, not just contractors. I made no money and then a lot of money. My whole life no longer revolves around just my healing business, even though I know that it's my purpose and my calling, but it's no longer 100%. It is a good 60-40, I would say.
That is
um, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. And this is actually the first time I'm saying I'm recently engaged now. So there's that.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. It is so
You.
inspiring to hear your story and your journey. And thank you for sharing with such honesty and vulnerability. And like one thing that really comes through when you're talking is that how you were like, yeah. So I got really interested and I got curious and it was like that we can invite into any situation of like, let me get really curious. Like what's at play here, you know?
Yeah.
That's when we really find like this connectivity that can, we're able to, really make significant changes. But it comes from a place of being curious, looking at it from a place of, 0 point neutrality, and really just, yeah,
Yeah. And it's, I say that everything's ancestral. Like I said earlier, it's like, well, I don't want to let go of my business being my man because that's the money and resource. So my relationship to money and resource is this from my ancestry, from my lineage, not just my family and what I've been taught. Um, and what will it mean if I am taking more time, not being all up in the day to day of my business, and someone else can do that as a COO or a CFO? Like, what does that mean to no longer mother in this way? And so, again, from a coaching perspective, it's, hey, I want to have more time. I want to still make money. I want to be able to travel and I want to have a life outside. What needs to change to do that step by step? But that doesn't change who I am as a woman. It didn't change my energy. It didn't have me dating different kinds of men. It didn't have me feeling, the only word that I can say is free to create whatever I want. Like that's the transformation that came. I'm not afraid of mothering, whether it's my business or my actual babies. I'm not afraid to be vulnerable and open and to receive from a man in a way that I've never done before, including from my own father. To CEOs or, small business owners, like, let's do ancestral healing so you can make more money in your business. I really don't give a shit about the money in the business. I care about the person that you get to become and what you get access to from your lineage and from your heart's desires, that you can then create and manifest whatever you want in your business or in your relationship to money or in your relationships to women or in your relationship to mothering or your father or whatever, home. Like that to me is the juiciest. That's where it's a lasting change that isn't taken away. You don't have to keep investing in coach after coach after coach after coach and program after program. I want you to go and actually live your life and be the change that you want to see in the world, but that we need and that your ancestors want from you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel is so exciting about the work that you're bringing forth is that you're really empowering people and giving them the tools, to be able to explore this on their own, like to be able to, do this work with you, but then also not feel like it's outside of them or it's inaccessible.
No, yeah, that's exactly it. It's so, I'll tell you what, I used to not want to say this on podcasts because if anyone ever works, I don't want them to like feel like they've been predisposed to this. But I will say, one of my favorite things when folks finally connect with their ancestors, because it might take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions, it just depends on the person and their people. But they'll be like, oh wow, like they're right there. Like this is really happening. And I'm like, yes, this is your birthright to have this level of resource, this level of supporting you. And you don't give your power away to your ancestors. You get to co create and collaborate with them and know that they have your back as you guys are working through some things. And you step into being whatever it is you want to be in your real life. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is such a connection to be able to draw upon, and I can understand how it's like, wow, this is available for me, and I had no idea. So, yeah,
Yeah.
what incredible work, Ash. I would love to ask you, like, how can people connect with you? Are you still offering private sessions, or what does it look like when people, go on that journey with you?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Before I answer it, there's one more piece that needs to be said, if you don't mind. One other thing that I see a lot with entrepreneurs when we do work together with our ancestors or with your ancestors is sometimes we find ourselves at a cross in the road or like a fork in the road of like, do I do this or do this? Do I expand in this direction? Or like, what really is my purpose or my mission? Is my business and brand on par, right, with my life and what I want to be? And there's this moment of almost like having an amalgamation of all of your gifts, all of your ancestral gifts, all of your soul agreements, and bringing them together and elevating them and expressing that into the world. And so I just want to put that out there because I'm talking about relationships, I'm talking about money, I'm talking about babies and all these things, but also as it relates to your actual business. We walk with ancestral gifts and callings and purpose. And sometimes when the business isn't the way, it's not showing up or producing or creating or feeling like it's in flow, it's because we need to jigger some things and pull some stuff up, right? Around your ancestral agreements and your calling and your gifts. So that's another way that ancestral healing plays up in business and being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, 1000%. I am so glad you brought that up because it's so true. It's like my
Yeah.
background. I have an MBA, it's like how, I know all the strategy and things can be so helpful. And yet, oftentimes when we run into roadblocks, and I say this from a personal perspective, I say this from working with clients, it's like, it's often not the linear tactical things, it's the energetics, it's what's
Yeah.
happening internally. And this work is so, so important, so valuable. So, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for all that you're doing.
No, I appreciate it. This is so wonderful. I'm just so delightful. It's such an aligned place to be. And I appreciate your space and being able to talk so much about my passion with ancestors and helping everyone be the best that they can be and create what they want to create in the world. So to find me, I am taking private clients for 2023. So feel free to reach out. You can visit my website or you can just email my team directly at info@ashleyjohns.com. You can, of course, find me on Instagram at Ash Inspires. I'm coming back online. I am just taking all the information from a 2022 and my travels. And so we've got some incredibly beautiful new content coming out. So you can check me out there. And I'm sure we'll put some messaging out on offerings. And then what I'm most excited about, this might call to you, those who are listening. This will be my second year offering my 9-month annual mastermind called
Mastermind.
Elevate Mastermind. Yes, Elevate Mastermind. So it's great. It's 24 women. We journey together for 9 months. And in that period, there's women who are leveling up in all different areas of their lives. And we do it with the ancestors together. So it's an incredible incubator. It is immersive. Last year, it was hard to even close the mastermind because we just wanted to stay together. And it's just been incredible to see the changes that happen. So if you're interested in masterminding, definitely reach out, be in touch. It'd be a delight.
That sounds incredible. When does that journey begin?
Starts in March. We will
Wow.
start in the spring.
Okay, so that's right around the corner. We will link to all of those in the show notes. Ash, it's been such a pleasure and delight connecting with you. You are such an incredible storyteller, wisdom keeper, way sharer. Thank you for your heart and your compassion. Thank you so much for being here.
I receive all of that and I appreciate it so much. It's such a beautiful, like really such a beautiful session. I appreciate it.